Thierry Marie, the leader of the Tour de France, signing in this morning for the first full day of racing. And just after 9 o'clock, the 198 riders left Lyon for a circuit of 114 kilometres, with climbs taking them to over 1,300 feet. Far from an easy ride, especially before this afternoon's team time trial. And hello and welcome again to Lyon, the start city of this year's Tour de France, and again it's hot and very humid. Behind me here is the podium where the winner of this morning's road race stage will come, and perhaps too a new leader of the race. Now you may remember a year ago in Futuroscope on the opening stage, the road race, 4 riders broke clear and they shaped the Tour so significantly they almost held the lead all the way to Paris. Bauer, Chiappucci, Masson and Pensek were the 4 who broke away that opening day, with Canadian Steve Bauer profiting most, taking the leader's yellow jersey and a 10-minute lead on the rest of the peloton. Yellow remained the colour on Bauer's back until stage 10, the first day in the mountains. On the climb up to Saint-Gervais-Mont-Blanc, he cracked, and it was a Frenchman celebrating his 27th birthday who took over the race lead. Ronan Pensek, 50 seconds ahead of Chiappucci, nearly 10 minutes on teammate Le Monde. The next day to Alpe d'Huez, the big names began to attack.
As Greg LeMond now hits the front, 150 metres to go, Bunyo's got his wheel, but Greg LeMond is sensing he wants this one. The Z team have been the team of the day, and Greg LeMond, the world champion, the Tour defending champion, gets the victory here. Oh, Denise! Oh no, I think Bunyo has snatched it on the line. Greg LeMond will take second place from Bunyo. Breaking is third.
Further down the mountain, Scotsman Robert Miller was pacing his teammate Pensek. With Miller's help, he would keep the lead for one more day. Stage 12, a mountain time trial to Villard-de-Lans, and it was Pensek's turn to crack. No one can help you in a time trial, and Pensek had to suffer alone. The lead passed to Claudio Chiappucci, a little-known Italian, the third leader from that 4-man break of stage 1. Stage 13 and Chiappucci's problems began. He started feeling less than well, and on the road to Saint-Etienne he was dropped by a group containing Le Monde and Breukink. By the finish, the Italian had lost a massive 4 minutes and 53 seconds. The next day was one of countless attacks. Chiappucci would lose a few more seconds, and it seemed inevitable he would lose the lead in the Pyrenees. However, the Italian surprised by attacking early on, and by the time the race arrived at the final climb, the leaders were all together. Chiappucci had fought off all attacks until Le Monde finally made the breakthrough, approaching Lutz-Ardiden.
The final kilometre on what has been a marvellous day in the Tour de France. The yellow jersey did it all right. He attacked the leaders and he got the lead he wanted. But it looks now as though he's paying the price at the end. Here he comes under the 2-kilometre banner. Greg LeMond and Miguel Indurain is riding 1 kilometre in front of him. And they built that lead in the last 5 kilometres of the day. A tremendous performance by Greg LeMond.
But the little Italian was determined, and he dug deep to find a sprint finish that would keep him in yellow by only 5 seconds. It was now a 2-man race. Le Monde would survive a puncture scare on stage 17, which forced the whole Z team to pace him back to Chiappucci. But all eyes were focused on Lake de Vassivière, the scene of the final time trial. It proved to be a triumph for Greg LeMond.
Here's the arrival now of Greg LeMond, and he's racing now to the yellow jersey, which he's raced for since the very first day. He's had to remove over 10 minutes off the lead of Claudio Chiappucci. It has taken him almost 3 weeks to the day to do that, and now when he crosses the line, he will have done it. And tomorrow on the road to Paris, it will be Greg LeMond, the American, in yellow. Fifth best on the time. You can probably hear the cheers here. 1 hour, 3 minutes and 37 seconds. That should be enough now to give Greg LeMond the yellow jersey.
Chiappucci finished over 2 minutes behind Le Monde, and for the first time a rider not from the 4 who broke away on stage 1 had the yellow jersey. The final stage into Paris proved a formality, and Greg LeMond was crowned champion, his 3rd Tour victory. Joining him on the podium, Chiappucci 2nd and Eric Breukink 3rd. And after that prologue time trial yesterday, Eric Breukink and Greg LeMond are already the great favourites for this year's Tour de France. We'll have a profile on Greg LeMond a little later on in the programme. Greg is aiming, in fact, for his third consecutive win in the race. And the last man to do that was Eddie Merckx in the 70s. And Paul Sherwin will also be talking to Eddie about his thoughts on who will win this year's Tour de France. All that a little later on. But let's start a busy day's coverage with highlights of this morning's road race.
And the stage this morning was the opening road race stage, going from Lyon, and just a few hundred yards behind where the riders leave is the finishing line. But it was a big circuit, 114 kilometres, and taking the riders quite a way up into the hills around the city. And the first rider to attack this morning was Rolf Jerman, the former Swiss national champion, riding his first Tour de France, and a very good climber indeed. Just a couple of small fourth category climbs, which came today. The yellow flag warning there of a danger point on the road, because in Europe yellow is the colour for danger. And Rolf Jerman was soon off on his own. And while Jerman was attacking, it seemed that the big bunch behind were taking it a little bit easy, because Rolf Jerman, not one of the grand favourites for victory in this Tour de France, but perhaps they should have heeded that yellow flag, because at the back of the field, a very valued teammate of Greg LeMond, Atle Volsvoll, who finished second in this year's Tour du Pont, took a very serious fall indeed. Extremely painful and multiple abrasions. Volsvoll put back on his bike, but clearly unhappy, and he was never to see the main field for the rest of the morning. The question is he okay for the team time trial this afternoon? Jarman knew nothing about that. He continued to lead as they went over the top of the Côte de Bellevue-Limonest after 29 kilometres. In second place, Thierry Claverola, who won the King of the Mountains a year ago, and François Lemarchand taking third spot. The field splitting up slightly as they chased down the leader, Jerman, who had a lead at this point of 55 seconds. Laurent Fignon racing through our screen, so too Robert Miller of Greg LeMond's Z team. And Rolf Jerman continued to keep on the pressure. Well, the field behind broke up, and this group of 10 riders broke clear of the field, and it was a most interesting attack, because in the breakaway was Greg LeMond and Eric Breukink.
Well, Eric Breukink was the first man to attack, and obviously as one of the main contenders for the Tour de France, Greg LeMond had to react. We can see Eric Breukink there in the green jersey, not his normal PDM jersey. That's the green jersey of leadership. And the points competition, number one there, just dropping off the screen, is Greg LeMond.
And so this breakaway of 10, Greg LeMond paying attention on the narrow roads around Lyon. As Eric Breukink slipped away, he was quickly followed by Greg LeMond. LeMond had a teammate there too in Bruno Cornier. And this group of 10 swept up Rolf Jerman to make 11, and the lead was going up to 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Well, they've just caught Jerman there before some bonification sprints, and Greg LeMond's going to have to be very attentive if he wants to try and get back some time on Eric Breukink.
And LeMond wanting more action, especially from his rival Eric Breukink. Then came the first big bonus sprint at Craponne at 56 kilometres, and the flying wheels of the Soviet rider Abju Japarov showing a clean pair of heels to Greg LeMond, but it's LeMond who gets the second place bonus.
Well, that second place bonus of 4 seconds will now actually put him in the lead on the road at the moment. He'll be 1 second in front of Eric Breukink. But there's another bonification sprint to come as we go back to the main field. And Jean-François Bernard from Delgado's team is leading the chase, trying to bring back that breakaway.
And of course, like many of the stars in the Tour de France, they realise now they've made a big mistake this morning. They've allowed Greg LeMond and Eric Breukink their head, and they're trying to do something about it. But with the gap opening all of the time, they were now extremely worried. So the big team leaders calling up their teammates to try and chase down at this early breakaway in the Tour de France. It was 4 riders who upset the rhythm a year ago. Now there was a group of 11. Roger Leger, the team manager of Greg LeMond, telling him the good news, and LeMond continuing to apply the pressure as the finish in Lyon was coming closer and closer. The main field reducing the gap to inside 1 minute and 30 seconds. But by the time they came to the second big sprint of the day at Vénissieux, 105 kilometres covered, Greg LeMond was finding his sprinting legs as well on the left of our picture. A superb finish by Le Mans, beating Rolf Sorensen and Erik Breukink in the green jersey. 6 more seconds in the bag, 10 claims so far. Greg LeMond was building a lead in the Tour de France. And the lead was increasing on the road as well. It was now up to 2 minutes. Erik Breukink and Greg LeMond, the green and the blue. Then just the finish to come, the world champion Rudy Darlens, who took his title in Japan, was trying to win at the opening road race stage of the Tour de France. He leads out the race. More bonuses for the first 3 riders on the line, so not surprisingly, Greg LeMond was taking an interest again. But it was the flying legs once more. Jumadilin Abdu-Japarov of the Soviet Union. Sean Kelly, trying to win his first stage for 10 years, takes second place. Greg LeMond finishes third and takes 4 more seconds in time bonus. Then came the wait to see just how long it would be before the main field came in. Greg LeMond in 2 days had left it in no doubt. He was back in this Tour de France and he was back to win it. The main field came in, 1 minute 44 seconds had ticked by. Add to that the 14 seconds time bonuses LeMond has collected, and today he has gained 1 minute 58 seconds over many of his feared rivals in this year's Tour de France. So the result of the stage, Jumadilin Abdu-Japarov looking extremely happy here on the podium, and well he might, his first stage win ever in the Tour de France. He gets the stage win from Sean Kelly, still searching for a stage win. He hasn't had one, in fact, since 1982. And Greg LeMond in third place, the world champion Rudy Darlens taking 4th. The overall situation before the team time trial, Greg LeMond now leads the Tour de France by 11 seconds from Erik Breukink, and in third place Abdu-Japarov 23 seconds back, the same as the Danish rider Rolf Sorensen. Sean Kelly is in 5th place and Raul Alcala is 6th. Well, as always, as soon as the winner crosses the line, Paul Scherm is down out of the commentary box and in the melee to interview Greg LeMond.
Greg, was that a plan this morning, or was it just because the track was so dangerous?
No, it was just a very dangerous course, and I took the opportunity. I looked back, we were away, and I knew once we had enough time, people were going to hesitate.
And do you think that's good for you for the rest of the tour?
You better believe it.
I think you have to agree that you must believe everything Greg LeMond says. He's lived up to his word today. He's attacked and he's stolen the yellow jersey on the very first morning of a full day in the Tour de France. He's in the crowd back there now, but he's going to have to change pretty quickly because he'll soon be starting the team time trial. Well, he now leads this race by almost 15 seconds of Erik Breukink, but they do say in the time trial this afternoon, Erik Breukink's team will fight back. After we come back after the short break, we'll have a profile on Greg LeMond, and Paul Sherwin will also introduce us to the intricacies of the team time trial. See you in a moment. And welcome back to the Tour de France, a double dose for the riders today. We've seen this morning's road race. Now we've moved some 10 kilometres away from the finishing line there to the next day's finish, the team time trial here on the outskirts of the city. Greg LeMond has put all of the pressure on himself now, taking the lead so early, but you know, he really is a most remarkable character when it comes to the Tour de France. And here's Gary Imlach to tell us more.
The American import with the French name has never finished lower than 3rd in the Tour, and that was on his 1984 debut. In 85 he was 2nd, and in 86 became the first non-European to win it. Within 12 months, though, LeMond's career was almost over, along with his life. A shooting accident left him with terrible injuries, and everyone else with serious doubts about his ability to come back. In 1989, though, he did, along with 100 grams of lead still lodged in his body, and took the race from Laurent Fignon in the Tour's greatest ever finish.
The clock is counting down, so are the meters to the line. This is going to be incredible. Fignon is bouncing off the barriers here. He's lost the Tour de France. The crowd has realised it. Laurent Fignon has lost the Tour de France. Right on the line as he comes over. 55 seconds is countdown. He has lost the Tour de France by 8 seconds. Can you believe that? Laurent Fignon has lost the Tour and Greg LeMond has won it.
Since his accident, Greg has placed more emphasis on his family and less on the rest of the racing calendar, which is largely used to help him peak for the Tour. It's an approach which has its critics, but you can't argue with its effectiveness. Last year, Lamond won his third Tour, again on the final time trial.
And tomorrow on the road to Paris, it will be Greg LeMond, the American in yellow. Fifth best on the time. You can probably hear the cheers here. 1 hour, 3 minutes and 37 seconds. That should be enough now to give Greg LeMond the yellow jersey.
This year, he's also been training for an attempt on the world 1 hour record. Still, the Tour and the prospect of becoming the first man since Eddie Merckx to win it 3 years running remains his top priority.
I thrive in this type of racing, and I'm in good shape now. I'm in better shape than I was at Trevitali, much better, and I'm better than I was at Tour of Switzerland. It's normal. I've had more time, I've had more racing, and each week I pass, I feel myself improving, especially in June. But if I'll be up to the battle against Brookings and Buño, we'll see. I can't tell you. No matter what, I'm going in with the same objective as just trying to win, and I'm going to fight to the end. And I hope I have a good tour, but that's all I can do. I'm not a robot. I'm a human being, and I can't program myself every year to be at my best. I try to be at my best here.
Greg's remarkable consistency in this race is so good, you really would be forgiven if you did think he was a robot for the Tour de France. Well, he's set himself up in the yellow jersey. He leads his nearest rival, Eric Breukink, now by almost a quarter of a minute. And all of his big contenders from the rest of the field, well, they were nearly 2 minutes back today. The team time trial is next. It's a difficult stage for everybody in this race because they rely purely on their team. To explain more about the equipment, Gary Imlach, well, first of all, let's start with Paul Sherwin to explain the tactics we'll see employed.
The team time trial, as you would expect, is all about teamwork. The riders take it in turns to ride at the front. The lead rider uses 20% more energy driving through the wind than those in his slipstream. After a stretch of around 100 yards, he will drop off the front and slip into the formation until his turn comes round again. If a team is faced with a very strong wind blowing across the road, from the right in this case, they will adopt a formation to avoid it. You see here the diagonal line that they've made across the road. This is known as an echelon. The closer the team rides together, the better for its efficiency. Here there is only a matter of inches between the riders. Quite dangerous, but they get the full benefit of each other's slipstream. If one rider is left behind, he will be sacrificed, providing he's not the team leader. The object of the team time trial is to get the leader to the finish as quickly as possible. The time for the team is taken when the fifth rider crosses the line, so it's important to have a strong team. Any rider finishing behind the fifth rider and not in the compact group will be given his own time.
Now, I may not have Mr. Sherwin's tactical expertise, but I know a funny-looking bike when I see one. This is a specialist time trial machine, and the most obvious difference between this and an everyday, every-stage bike is its shape, which eases the rider forward into the most aerodynamic position. The once exotic, now familiar tri-bars keep him there, and the whole arrangement is topped off by the aerodynamic teardrop-shaped helmet. So far, so straightforward. Bringing up the rear, though, is the great time trial debate. A lot of riders now use carbon fibre disc wheels like this one. They're more rigid than spokes, they cut through the air more smoothly, and their little extra weight can add impetus to a ride. In fact, some team mechanics actually put loose weights inside the disc so that as it gains speed, they're flung out towards the rim, creating a flywheel effect. Now, that's fine on the flat, but critics of the disc wheel say that it's a liability going up hills and round bends because of that extra weight and its comparatively poor manoeuvrability. Another problem is wind, which can affect stability, although just to confuse things further, the latest American research seems to show that a moderate crosswind can actually help blow the flywheel forward. The compromise candidate is this, the carbon fibre spoke wheel, and teams will probably be making last-minute weather checks today before deciding which one to use. Whatever the wheels, though, these aren't the fastest bikes to be seen in Lyon this week. That honour was claimed on Thursday by a stranger-looking bunch of bikes altogether.
Looking, to be honest, disconcertingly like the world's fastest-acting suppositories, 3 streamlined recumbent bikes from the USA, France and Great Britain sped down a closed-off Lyon boulevard in an attempt on the current 1-kilometre speed record. On his second run, Californian Freddie Markham clocked 86 kilometres an hour, an improvement of 1 kilometre on the old world record.
Even I think it's there. He just said the rest of the road, yeah.
Lying back and thinking of England was Pat Kinch from Manchester, but his best run was only 82 kilometres an hour. He and his team left Lyon in search of sponsorship for another attempt on the world record in Colorado later this year.
There'll be nothing quite that bizarre on show here this afternoon, although interestingly, cycling's racing body has recently relaxed the regulations on seat rest, so you may see some strange aerodynamic shapes behind the riders this afternoon in the team time trial. That's where we're going now. Bronze to Chassier. Here's Phil.
Well, thanks, Gary, and all of the space-age equipment is certainly out on the road today. And this is the Carrera team. The rider wearing the green jersey is Abdu Japarov, the winner this morning, but he looks as though he's finding it a bit tougher in the time trial this afternoon. This is the situation at 36.5 kilometres, where the class team already in with the best time of 42 minutes and 8 seconds, and Chateau Dax are now in second place. Not a great ride there by Buñol's team.
Rather surprising, because we would have thought he'd tried to get as much time back as possible, but it just goes to show the strength of Spanish cycling these days, because there's a team starting a little bit later on from Spain, the Once team. That's a team that could very well push a lot of people into... it looks as if Abdu Japarov, this morning's winner, is actually getting dropped by the rest of his teammates there, so that was obviously a very difficult stage for him.
Well, he's left a nasty hole there, and he's put his two teammates in a spot of trouble too, Zayna and Eric Maschler. They've been caught off the back as Abdu Japarov, the winner this morning, is now going to have to ride alone. And it's not an armchair ride, by the way. If you're dropped by your team, if you can in fact be eliminated on the time based on the fastest team of the day. And so he'll be well aware of that, but he's got to stay in reasonable contact with his teammates as he drops away. And look at this fall, the team is in all sorts of trouble.
Well, this really has caused havoc, because Abdu Japarov brought the other two riders off the back, but with Chiappucci, their leader for the Tour de France, they haven't waited for these two riders to come back into contest. Now the 5 riders, you can see, are just moving away now.
Well, let's not forget that the time for a team time trial is taken on the 5th rider to cross the line.
They seem to have realised now what's happened, so they're waiting to let the other two riders get back into contention. It's going to be very important, because this is a hard circuit. It gets very windy towards the end, and you need as many riders as possible. They're just easing. They will have lost a little bit of time, but waiting for the two riders to come back will help them. That is, in fact, Claudio Chiappucci, who is actually orchestrating everything and waiting now, probably waiting for Eric Maschler.
And this is the arrival of the Motorola team from the United States. And it looks, Paul, as though they've kept most of their formation together.
Yeah, it looks as if they may well have done. That's a very good time, but I don't think they're going to beat the time of class at the moment. You see them just coming down the finishing straight. They've obviously tried to do their best, but not managed to do it.
Well, they were down on the class time, which is still the best time at 17.5 kilometres, but they pulled back quite well on this last section of the course. They're not too far behind the class team now. I think just one rider missing from the formation here. As they come up to the line for Motorola, 42 minutes, 22 seconds, a very good time. Second best time at the moment, but still some very good teams to finish. And here we go back now to the Once team, led by the grand old man, Marino Lajareta. There he is on the screen, number 41. And this is a virtual identical team that rode in the Tour of Spain. And what a great Tour of Spain they had. They won it both on team and individual. The individual winner was number 47, Melchor Mauri. And they won the team time trial in that event as well. A lot of people think they might score the best time today. No indication yet as to how well they're going. No intermediate times available on the progress yet of the Once team. But they probably won't know either that the Ariostia team seems to be setting the targets for the rest to aim at. They're still the best time to the 17.5 kilometres point with 19 minutes and 54 seconds. There's Lajareta, number 41.
Just sliding to the back there. You can see from the way the riders were riding there, it was a straight line, so they're obviously riding into a headwind. The rider on the front will do 100, 200 metres, then he'll swing off and drop back to the back of the line so he can get back into the slipstream.
And the arrival of the Carrera team with Abdu Japarov sitting on the back there with his bright green jersey as the new leader of the Tour de France on points. That's for the most consistent daily finisher, of course. He took that jersey with his stage win this morning. And Abdu Japarov has had a rough ride in his team time trial, but he's hung on to the bitter end with his team. Claudio Chiappucci wants to bring this rider home now with a good time. Chiappucci leading here. He needs the time, of course, the time taken on the fifth man. He looks over to see where that fifth man is and then comes up to the line. 42 minutes 32, fifth place for Chiappucci's team. And looking now at the TVM team, their time at 17.5 kilometres at 21 minutes and 11 seconds. So they too a little bit off the pace, to say the least, from the Ariostia team. And there could be a surprise in store by the end of the stage today. Rolf Sorensen from Denmark might be pulling on the leader's yellow jersey. We're waiting for information, of course, on the Z team. This is the situation at that 17.5 kilometres point, showing Ariostia with that 19 minutes 54 performance at that point. Klaas, who are also now in with the best time originally, 18 seconds slower. And this is the team of Gert-Jan Teunissen from TVM. He, like everybody else, caught out this morning, and Gert-Jan finishing deep down in the heart of the big peloton, 1 minute and 44 seconds back in 67th place. And our first chance now to have a look at the Panasonic team, the team that used to rule the roost in team time trialing in the Tour de France and indeed in every other race in the world. But they've been a suspect over the years, although they won this event last year. Here's their lineup: Rudy Dollens, who's in our picture here, the world champion, wearing the rainbow-coloured jersey. His right to wear that, of course, right up until the World Championships this year, which were in Stuttgart, Germany. And Vyacheslav Yekimov, 152, the professional world hour record holder. And another chance to see a straight line of riders racing into the headwind. And the times a little bit down at 17.5 kilometres. Panasonic, they've gone through some 20 seconds slower than Ariostia. That in itself is something of a surprise.
Well, just a little bit, but they may well have taken a slow start because there is a rising headwind towards the end of this stage, and they've got a very good formation. They may well be able to pull something out of the back in the second half of this race.
Well, here's the arrival of the... Oh, there's been a crash here, and this is a disaster for Ariostia. They were recording the best time without a shadow of a doubt. They've collided on that left-hand bend, and they've all gone down here. But I think Argentin and Rolf Sorensen have been lucky, and they've missed it. The rest of the team don't know what to do. Well, they must count the riders who are with them, because 5 to count on the line, and the rest will have to get in, and they will record separate times. You can see on the clock here that they, in fact... It could well have been Argentine on the floor there, but look at this, 42.8 is the time to beat, so well inside that, the time taken on the fifth man to finish, but the other riders will be given a separate time. 41.23 for the riders who are in, and now we'll have to wait and see if the riders still to finish, as they receive the applause of the crowd here, as they come in over the line. Alberto Eli has come in, and Sorensen is the rider they left behind, who's come in with a separate time, and time will tell, of course, before the big teams arrive, but it might well be that that crash right on the line has cost Sorensen the race lead today, and even slower than him was the team leader, Moreno Argentin. He was on the ground as well. Well, that was an absolute disaster. A fault made on that sharp left-hand bend, and here, let's have a look at this again now. Look at the handlebars of this rider who's guiding himself in, and just about keeping that bike upright. Now let's have a look at that again here in slow motion as the riders come into the corner, because the two most important men in the team go down, and the first rider who fell there simply overcooked it on the bend, and the other teams came down in a ricocheting effect. 2 of the 3 men on the floor, Moreno Argentin, the team leader, and more importantly, of course, the man who might have taken the yellow jersey, Rolf Sorensen. Well, back down the road we go to join the Panasonic team heading up towards the finish. They were only 20 seconds down at 17.5 kilometres on the Ariostia team, and that crash may well have done the Panasonics the favour, because they might now well be equal on time.
Well, that's a kind of mistake that can happen to anybody. There's a very difficult entrance into the Park Expo here. And it's very sad to see a rider like Rolf Sorensen go down, because he was so aggressive this morning, and maybe to lose the yellow jersey, something that you don't get very many opportunities in your life to do, and he's just lost it on a crash within sight of the finish line.
And this is the arrival of Stephen Roach, a long way off the back of his Tonton Tapis team. So Brother Lawrence finished with them, but the elder statesman, Stephen Roach, winner of the 1987 race, certainly did not, and that doesn't all well for the rest of this Tour de France. And here is the Once team now. Their time will be interesting, but they've lost time somewhere because they were well outside the arrival time of Ariostia. And there's a car here right on the line, and they're just about going to get it away in time, and that was close because in comes the Ariostia team now up towards the finish. This will be a little bit disappointing for Marina Lajareta and the Once team because they were the winners of the stage in the Tour of Spain, a long way outside this time.
Well, you can see, I think, what is happening today. All the earlier teams were slightly advantaged by the fact there was no wind, and the wind is definitely rising, so that's going to be a disadvantage for the team starting later on. But look at the time at the top there, 50.5 kilometers an hour. That's still 31 miles an hour, and we're complaining.
Well, we're looking now at the Benesto team, and it looks as though they're in a spot of trouble here. A very, very ragged line indeed. And third from the back here was the team leader, Pedro Delgado, Paul.
Yeah, he definitely seemed to be in trouble there. They were pulling out. It looked as if Indiran was on the front there, stretching out the line. And Delgado, looking back probably to the time trial in Luxembourg when he had similar problems.
Well, in the team time trial there, of course, he was off the back of the group with stomach trouble, and Delgado not enjoying this team time trial again. Well, the big hitters still to arrive, Zed and PDM, so we'll take a very short break.
Hello and welcome back. We're in the middle of the team time trial with the top team still to finish, and we'll rejoin the action very shortly. But just before the Tour de France started, Paul Sherwin spoke with Eddie Merckx, the legend of world cycling. He asked him about the route, who it would suit, and who would win.
Eddie, some people are saying this year the Tour de France is a little bit easier than it has been for the last few years. There aren't quite as many climbs.
Yeah, maybe it's a little less climbs, but I think you have two big stages, one in the Pyrenees. To Jacquard-Font-Laurent was a very hard stage with 250 kilometers, and also one in the Alps. Boudoir-Morzine is also a very long stage, and I think you must be very strong that day because the day before you have maybe not so big stages, big climbs, but I think the riders will be nervous. The two big stages.
But this year as well, there are a lot of time trials in the Tour de France. Do you think that's going to affect the overall results? Do you think that's going to advantage a certain kind of rider?
Yeah, sure. I think it will be advantage riders like Breuging, Bugno, Mori, or Indurain, who are very strong in time trial, because last year Greg LeMond was was not so strong in the time trial, but it will be a very open tour this year, I think.
Well, a lot of people are saying that Greg LeMond wants to go and win the Tour de France for the third time on the run. You've already done that. Do you think that Greg LeMond can do that this year?
Yeah, with talent he can do that, but I think he missed a little motivation. And also the fact that he stopped in the Giro is not good psychologically for him, because the other years he finished the Tour of Italy, and also he finished the Tour of Switzerland because he need to race a lot, and that's maybe a big handicap this year for Greg, but with his talent maybe you never know.
But because of that slight weakness, do you think the other riders will take advantage of that and try and attack him early on?
Yes, I think so. I think he will not have the same opportunity like last year when Chiappucci was 10 minutes before and everything right to beat Chiappucci. I think this year the riders will ride more to beat Greg LeMond.
So in your opinion, who's going to win the Tour de France?
It's very hard to say, but if I have to put a name on the table, I will say Gianni Bugno.
Thanks very much, Paul, and indeed Eddie Merckx will probably be biting his tongue now after he knows what happened to Gianni Bugno today in the Tour de France. This is the arrival of Benesto, and they too are outside the time of Ariostia, and I must say they have not looked a very good formation out on the road, with Delgado in a little bit of trouble all the way to the line. And the last few ounces of energy being squeezed out to try and save a few seconds, and a big cheer from the crowd as they recognize the Spanish formation. Coming up to the line now, Miguel Indurain leading Pedro Delgado over the line, but they're still only sixth best so far, 42 minutes and 28 seconds. The situation at the moment then with Zed, PDM, Buckler and Castorama to finish, and here it is. 41 minutes, 23 seconds for Austria, the fastest team home, but they had that crash approaching the line. Panasonic holding second place, and the Spanish formation class keeping well up the leaderboard in third slot. Motorola are fourth, Gatorade fifth, and Benesto just coming on the leaderboard there with sixth. And our first chance to see the Z team, Paul, and it's a most interesting piece of reading because at 17.5 kilometres, Z have gone through in 20 minutes 35 seconds, and PDM team with Eric Breukink on, they've gone through just 3 seconds slower.
Well, it's a big battle between those two riders. There we get a glimpse of Greg LeMond racing in the yellow jersey here, but it's also interesting to know what the times are going to be like in respect of the Panasonic team and also the time of Rolf Sorensen. Although his team actually went through in first position, Rolf Sorensen crashed in the last kilometre, and we'd like to find out what his time is because Sorensen could still be a pretender to take that yellow jersey.
So at this point, although Greg LeMond is successfully holding off the pursuit of the PDM squad, and of course that means Eric Breukink, there's a real threat now that the Panasonic team, with the world champion Rudy Dornans on it, might well be moving into the overall lead, because Dornans this morning was just 37 seconds behind Greg LeMond. That team is in, and at the early checks, the Panasonics have the advantage over the Z boys. So coming up to the finishing line now, the Buckler team, they were fourth best at the 17.5 kilometre point with 20 minutes and 22 seconds, but they've lost time. So this rising wind has hit them hard, 42.12, and they hold that fourth place. And just look at this now, the Z are on the run in towards the finish, and Greg LeMond riding like two men today. He's at the front, and look at the gaps between those wheels.
Well, he really is pulling everything out of himself at the moment. He knows that he's got to keep away from the PDM, and he knows he's got to keep in front of all those other teams that were represented there this morning. I'm looking down through the riders to see if Atle Kowalsvoll is still there. I'm not sure if I can see him. We haven't yet managed to see the full complement of the Z team from our photographs, because Atle Kowalsvoll was that rider who we saw falling this morning, and it may well be that the Z team have had to ride this team time trial with only 8 riders.
And LeMond himself slipping down the line, but having a bit of trouble to get back onto the speed here. The time that they've got to come home in, by the way, it's worth noting now, is 42 minutes and 35 seconds. If they don't do that time, then Rudy Dornans on the Panasonic team, because that team has already finished, will be the new leader of the Tour de France. So we'll watch out for the time of 42 minutes 35 seconds they run in now towards the finish. Well, one or two of the riders here, Paul, have got no numbers on the suit, so there'll be a fine for them this evening.
Well, there won't be a fine, I don't think, because the Tour de France this year for the first time has started to use sticky numbers, and I think it's very difficult for those numbers to actually stick onto these skin suits that the riders use for the aerodynamic uses in the time trials. The problem is these materials are so stretchy that the numbers can't stick to them very well, and so many teams have lost their numbers during the course of the race.
And LeMond has wasted no time at all in getting to the front to pull this team along. 3, 6, 7 of them down there at the moment, 8 of them, so it looks as though Volsvoll has been pulled from the race, Paul.
It looks as if he must have gone out. We can't know at what stage of the race he was lost, but he's also lost another teammate there as well. So Greg really is suffering, because I can be sure that PDM have got a full complement of riders boring down on him from behind, and they will get the time checks because PDM started on the road after the Z team.
Yes, because each team starts at a 4-minute interval before the next one, and the PDM team start exactly 4 minutes behind Greg LeMond's team today. And so the advantage is to the PDM team of Eric Breukink, because you bet your life there'll be people along the roadside shouting the time differences back to the PDM team as they come through. Greg is doing most of the work here, so anxious to get back to the front. He's being trailed there by Bruno Cornier's teammate, We go down the road a little ways now, and we pick up the PDM boys. Here they are.
Well, that looks like it was Nico Verhoeven just dropping to the back there, but they've still got a full complement, I think, here. The team led by Eric Brooking, seconded very well, I think, by Raoul Alcala, who was present in that 11-man group this morning, and it was fantastic to see Sean Kelly up there flying the Irish flag, taking second place. I was very upset about that, but maybe Sean will come up with some goods later on in the tour. There, at the back, number 22 was Alcala. Now, here is Greg LeMond's team, and look at that time, 41.41, as we bring them up to the line.
Well, that's tremendous, because 42.35, there's no reason to worry about that. This fine riding by LeMond again in the closing stages of the time trial today has certainly made sure that at least Rudy Darlands won't be taking his yellow jersey. We'll have to wait for the arrival of the Broiking's team to know if he keeps it. But right now, Greg LeMond and the team bringing them home here tremendously. Philippe Cassado bringing them round and lining up for home now. And the Zeds team come in and with a good time, 42.12 for fourth best on the day. And Greg LeMond will keep his yellow jersey as so far. So Greg LeMond is into the enclosure, and a tremendous piece of pacemaking as well. And I must say, he still looks rather fresh.
As we go back to the PDM team, there is still Raoul Alcala at the back. Second from the rear, number 21 there is Eric Brooking. Now this team has to come through the finish line in 42.01 seconds if Eric Brooking is to take that jersey off the shoulders of Greg LeMond.
Means they've got to be faster than Greg LeMond's team has just arrived with 42.12. Brooking is looking for the 42 minutes and 1 second ride to take the overall lead today. And they were 3 seconds apart, and the only check were being given today, which came at 17.5 kilometres. Now it's a question of which group finishes the better. And of course, Paul, Greg LeMond's group was clearly handicapped because LeMond found it necessary to do most of the pacemaking himself.
Well, Greg did a lot of work in the last part there, and this last part of the time trial, it would appear, has been very, very difficult because teams have been losing a lot of time in the second half here, and it may be to the advantage of PDM because they still appear to have a full complement of riders.
PDM team are enjoying their Tour de France as well. 3 riders in that escape this morning.
It looks as if Alcala has a problem here. He's got his arm up. He's shouting it looks as if it may well be a front wheel puncture. I'm not very sure. The camera's bouncing a little bit, but it may well be that Alcala is on a softening front wheel and he's shouting up the team car.
It looks as though it is, Paul. That tyre is definitely soft, and Alcala is going to have to hang on in there because nobody can wait for him now.
As they go 2 kilometres to go, and it looks as if the 2 teammates have waited for Alcala to see what the problem is, but the team car still hasn't come, so maybe he's going to try and risk it and get to the finish on a flattening tyre.
So Alcala will be taking a separate time, of course, as they drop away from the lead here. They're thinking more now of pulling Eric Brooking into the leader's yellow jersey, and there is the offending front flat, and it looks as though Raoul Alcala will have to fend for himself now, and the question is, will he get there without changing a wheel?
Well, the problem is he's going to take a risk. He knows himself that he can take the risk of losing 15 or 20 seconds. But on top of that, there is also that dangerous entrance into the Eurexpo here. If he tries and get a front flat tyre around that corner, he may well come off as well. So he knows himself. It's up to him now to make the decision.
Well, the tempo now being kept very high indeed at 1 kilometre to go by Falk Bowden, the former amateur world champion, and indeed the former East German. And let's watch Alcala around this bend, and I'm not surprised he's frightened because he knows with a front wheel you don't have a lot of chance, but it looks as though he's safely negotiated the bend. But the 5 teammates are now going for the time because the time taken on the 5th rider to cross the line, Alcala here will be given a separate time, and that's going to cost him his 6th place overall in the Tour de France.
Well, that's very bad luck for him, but look how they're really pulling everything out here. The PDM team at the front, they're going for the line with Eric Brooking. At the back here, some of the teammates, there's Eric Brooking actually on the front there, leading the team into the last 400 metres.
And the clock is on the screen, and the time is 42 minutes and 1 second. If PDM beat that, they'll have the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Brooking, and surely they're going to do it. As they spin for the line here, Greg LeMond might find his jersey isn't safe after all. They've done a tremendous last half to this time trial, and Eric Brooking now is going for the yellow. 42 minutes, 1 second, the time to beat. Brooking is third in line in this group as they go round the final corner. It's going to go by. Greg LeMond will stay in yellow tonight by the skin of his teeth. 42 minutes and 3 seconds. My goodness me, we've come to a Tour de France that even after day one is being fought on seconds. So the PDM team are home, and I think they may well find they've lost snatching the overall lead by just a couple of seconds today in the team time trial. The last team on the road to come home, the Castorama team, but their lineup is not going to affect the overall situation today. This is the team of Lyon, of course, and Thierry Marie, the first yellow jersey of this year's Tour de France. But they won't upset the apple cart now. Greg LeMond will be the race leader tonight. I say that with just a little bit of reservation because we are unsure of the time that the race officials have given Sorensen because of his fall approaching the finish. And there is a very, very slim chance indeed it might be a bit better than Greg LeMond. So I reserve that, but it looks to me, Paul, as though it's Greg LeMond again in yellow tonight. And here's the arrival of the last team in today's team time trial, the Castorama team led by Laurent Fignon. They had a very good midway time of 17.5 kilometres rather, with 20 minutes 29 seconds. And it's going to be a very tight finish, but I think they'll have to satisfy maybe second or third place. So Laurent Fignon's team get a tremendous round of applause here as the French lineup comes home. Second best for them, 41 minutes 31 seconds. As Thierry Marie brings home the Castorama team. Well, it is confirmed Rolf Sorensen in the crash did not lose all of his advantage. He had 27 seconds to play with after he hit the deck, and he managed to keep, or indeed keep some of that time intact, and enough to give him the overall lead in the Tour de France. And what a marvellous season this man is having. He's already leading the season-long World Cup competition, and now he pulls on the leadership of the Tour de France. And really, where we expected Eric Breukink to take away Greg LeMond's jersey this afternoon, it is the Danish rider, Rolf Sorensen. What a great Tour de France this is turning out to be. And just to confirm the result of the time trial, here on the outskirts of Dijon, a win for the Ariostoia team, 41 minutes and 23 seconds. In second place, the Castorama team, led by Laurent Fignon, 8 seconds back. Third place, Panasonic, 35 seconds slower. Fourth place, Eric Breukink's PDM team, they were 40 seconds down. Fifth was Klaas at 45 seconds. And sixth was the Buckler team at 49 seconds. So Ariostoia win the team time trial, and tonight on the podium they were very, very happy indeed, because the overall leader, now their teammate, Rolf Sorensen. Who would have thought that this morning when Greg LeMond started off so well? Sorensen getting up from that fall and conserving enough of his time that the team had gained for him to take the overall lead in this race. The challenge still comes from the men we've talked about all weekend, Greg LeMond and Eric Breukink. But there is one piece of sad news tonight, because we saw Stephen Roach come in alone. The reason being, he started some 7 minutes after his team. The team had simply gone without him because Stephen was training on the course. Well, he's been eliminated from the Tour de France, so the 1987 winner is out. Tomorrow the Tour de France moves on from Lyon. It heads towards Dijon, a ride of 210 kilometres. The last time he went to Dijon, Jean-Francois Bernard was the winner. And tomorrow night in our programme, which starts at 6:30, Gary Imlach will trace his career. So for the time being, from Paul Sherwin, Gary and myself, Phil Liggett, I'll say a very good night to you.